America's children are now the sickest children in the world and the sickest children in history, this generation. When I was a kid and when my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, in 1986, 12.8, so it had doubled. By 2006, it was 54%, more than half. And today we don't know because NIH refuses to release the data. Oh, it's probably around 60%. We know 1 out of every 7 kids has autoimmune disease. But we saw this explosion in chronic disease begin in 1989. We saw neurological diseases, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism. Autism went from 1 in 10,000 in my generation to 1 in every 34 of my kids' generation. Extraordinary. These kids, are kids that are, many of them, the ones with severe autism, are nonverbal, non-toilet trained. They'll never pay taxes. They'll never serve in the military. They'll never throw a baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never hold a hand of a girl and go out on a date. And their parents' lives are careers are derailed. The impacts on the community were James Lyons Weiler has just published a study, a scientist showing that the cost of autism to this country, of caring for these kids, will be $1 trillion by 2030. It's going to debilitate our country. In the same year, we saw an explosion in allergic diseases. Peanut allergies suddenly appeared. And pandemic, food allergies, eczema. I never heard of anybody with these diseases when I was a kid, and now they're in every classroom. Asthma, when my brother had asthma. I had 11 siblings, 70 cousins. My brother had asthma, and he was told by his doctor, there'll never be a cure because it's so rare, nobody will ever study it. Well, now 1 out of every 8 Black kids in our cities has it, and it is everywhere. Every classroom has albuterol inhalers. And then all of the autoimmune diseases suddenly appeared. I never knew anybody with diabetes. Juvenile diabetes became ubiquitous. Rheumatoid arthritis, all of these diseases nobody ever heard of in my generation. Crohn's disease, lupus. Suddenly, they're all over us. And we have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world. And, it's clearly caused by an environmental culprit, because genes don't cause epidemics. They can provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. And, why don't we know what that toxin is? It can only be a few things. There's only a few things that happened in 1989 that you can point to that became ubiquitous, that became, that affected every demographic, from Cubans in Key Biscayne to Inuit in Homer, Alaska. And there's only about 10 or 11 things it could be. And we don't know the answer to that because NIH won't allow anybody to study it, because at the end of that breadcrumb string is somebody very powerful. Our
children are our future, aren't they?
What?
Our children are our future, aren't they? So how is your platform going to
Well, we are going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. So thank you so much for your question, and thank you for answering that. Clearly, what you're saying here is we need to look honestly, look beyond the lenses and the locuses of power, and figure out what the real truth is here, and then really show up to serve our kids.
I can tell you that my first day as president, I'm going down to NIH, and I'm going to say, we're going to give infectious disease. We've studied a lot, and we're making a lot of these little bugs with gain of function, and we're going to give it a break for about 8 years, and we're going to start focusing on chronic disease. NIH has a $42 billion annual budget, has 56,000 scientists at universities and research centers all over the country. And it's funding them to do things. And unfortunately, what it's funding them to do mainly is to develop pharmaceutical drugs for the industry. That's the biggest incubator of new pharmaceutical products. For what purpose? Mainly to treat chronic disease, which they have caused. We're going to start identifying the toxins that are causing this. We know what they have to be. It has to be glyphosate, neonicotinoid pesticides, pfoas, pfases, cell phone, EMF radiation. There's only a few things. The exploding vaccine schedule, which went from, in 1989, we went from 3 to 72 vaccines mandated for our kids in a very short period, and the big change here was 89. It's probably all of these things. Our kids are swimming around in a toxic soup today, and every insult impacts their immune systems, and they all operate on the same kind of biological pathways. So it's probably all high fructose corn syrup, clearly associated with the obesity epidemic. I'm going to end these. I'm going to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country, and that is going to be the big war that I declare. Anyway, thanks.
Let's go.